Can you possibly imagine taking a tragic loss and using that as motivation to help better yourself and the world of combat sports? This episode I had today with Dr. Andrea Verburg Hill was important for me as a proponent of mental health and traumatic brain injuries and CTE. I found this a very important subject to explore. Dr. Andrea Verburg Hill is a licensed ringside physician who's looking to help better the world and make people's lives easier as they compete at the top echelon of combat sports. If you can, please share this one. Drop me a comment, like, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, as this is a very important subject. I really appreciate everyone's support as this drives me into keep putting out this content. Now, let's get it. Welcome back to Fight Capital, where we enter the ring of combat sports business. I'm your host, Ryan Rappaport. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Andrea Verburg Hill, who is a certified ringside physician dedicated to promoting athlete safety and concussion awareness. With over 2 decades in pediatrics, she also works in ringside medicine and now serves as a board member of the Association of Ringside Physicians. Andrea is committed to providing education and support to ensure a safer environment for athletes while advocating for mental health and women's health in sports. Thanks for joining me today, Andrea. How are you and where are you joining from?
I'm well, thank you, Ryan. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia right now. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was really interested to connect with you. I saw some of the rundown of the ARP,
hmm
Association of Ringside Physicians Conference, and I saw that you had Angela Lee out there as well, who I've spoken to
Yeah.
several times. I'm a big fan of her story, but I'm just curious. I haven't gone through a little bit of your work. What motivated you to focus on concussion awareness and CTE prevention, and how has your personal journey shaped how you're working in there now?
Well, I was married to a fighter who died by suicide and was diagnosed postmortem with CTE, presumably exacerbated rapidly by an acute concussion. But of course, that isn't something that physically you can diagnose postmortem. So I had worked like one fight before he died, just as a favor to a friend. We owned a Muay Thai gym and we had a guy who we sent to box because he was more a boxer than a Muay Thai fighter. And his first fight was coming up and the doctor dropped out and he begged me to come work it. And I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, I didn't want him to lose his fight. He'd worked so hard and he was a good kid. So I'd worked that one fight, but then my husband died probably 3 months later. And then after he died and after I found out everything, for a while I really couldn't handle combat sports. But I'd trained Muay Thai for, I think, like 10 or more years at that point in time. And I really didn't know what else to do for exercise. So I switched to boxing because I thought, well, every time I would go in the Muay Thai gym, I would cry. And so maybe if I go to a different gym and I put on shoes, it's enough of the same, but enough different that I can emotionally handle it. And then my first boxing coach just really kept saying, like, you need to do something. I remember I went in the first day and he said, you can't change what happened to you, but you can choose what you do with what happened to you. And he just really pushed me to start working fights along with a lot of the other Muay Thai fighters and MMA guys. They just said, who's better to help take care of us than you, and they kind of pushed me. And the first couple fights, they would sit with me and they would say, don't cry, you got to pay attention. And they just kind of like coached me through that hurdle until it kind of got to the point where I thought the sports were beautiful again, and it took a while. So, of course, then with that background, that's going to be my main focus: mental health, concussion, CTE. Of course, there are tons of other injuries in combat sports, but that's my personal story and my personal motivation. Really, I don't think if he had not died, I probably would have just worked a few more fights as favors to people, and it wouldn't have become such a big focus of my life, I don't think.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Obviously, tragedy like that, to see something positive spring from it is always important. And also a very important thing for me, too. I played collegiate football. I had something like 11 documented concussions during my football career. And did sparring since then, even though my career was ended my senior year playing college football. So since then, brain health has become a very important aspect for me. And there's really only so much you can do at this point, but to see someone who's on the ring side be able to support that and have that on their mind as they're trying to protect the athletes, I think is super important. And I know that maybe you just came back a day or two ago, but there was just the
Yeah.
Association of Ringside Physicians conference in DC. And I would just
hmm
love for you to talk about some of the insights or highlights for you from that conference and what you might want to communicate to people out in combat sports and abroad about what that mission of ARP has been.
Well, so the Association of Ringside Physicians is there to support education and development of better ringside physicians to help enhance the safety of the sport, obviously. We also try some outreach to different fighters and have been trying to pull them in over the last few years because maybe who better than us to teach them about medical issues. Would be more unbiased probably than some promotions who give them a paycheck giving them medical information, even though they try to do a really good job with that. We like to be an unbiased resource that's based on medicine and science. But along with it, we are all physicians who love the sports, so we're there to help fighters continue to do what they like to do instead of some medical groups, have policy statements against combat sports and would just say you need to stop that. It's bad for you. So we really want to help educate, improve the safety all the way around. This particular conference, it was fabulous because I was on the conference planning committee this time for the first time. So I really wanted mental health to be a big focus. And Angela Lee was nice enough to come and speak with us. And she and I did a talk and she did a talk. And it was, I think, very, very impactful, especially the two together. I gave like medical background and the factors that affect mental health and combat athletes. And then she told her personal story, which I'm sure you've talked to her, so it was really profound. It was the biggest section, I think, of the conference this year.
That's good. I think it's such an important story to tell to her and not going too deep into it because that's her story to share. Well, what are the most pressing safety concerns for athletes out there in combat sports today?
Of course, it's going to be concussions, probably CTE prevention. Most of the research is going on in the NFL. There is some research in combat athletes, but they don't have as much of the funding as the NFL research does. And then I think weight cuts. I think those are the weight cuts, concussion, CTE. You know.
I rail on about the weight cuts all the time. I
hmm
mean, that if the dehydration of your brain and then going in there and then rattling said brain has never seemed like a
Absolutely.
good idea to me.
Yeah, not at all.
Well, talk to me. I've seen some of the stuff out there about the difference between male and female athletes and the difference between concussion recovery. Is there any differences in how you treat male and females in terms of concussion recovery? And is there anything that impacts that approach?
Treatment really is going to be the same. It's just going to take a little longer for the female athletes typically to have their symptoms resolve. There are more risks for women. I would like to say we're identical and our brains are the same, but they aren't. And so there are a few physical things about women and their hormones that affect them and make them more susceptible to concussions than men.
Hmm.
So they get concussions easier. And then they typically would take about a month longer to recover than a man would. So, but the treatment itself is just going to be the same, just knowing that, you're probably going to have to give a little bit more anticipatory guidance to manage expectations in the female patient and let them know that it might be a longer recovery than they would like.
Yeah, I feel like there's this kind of like conflicting view out there when fans, casual observers, as I like to call them sometimes, are looking from the outside in, they see the ring physician as like anti-athlete or anti-fighter. And a lot of the ones that I know either compete, have trained, or are very knowledgeable on the sports. How has your experience as a ringside physician informed your views on the business and commercial aspects of combat sports?
You know, I think that there are some things that I don't like, and I think some of the business aspects affect mental health. And maybe sometimes as a woman, I've seen issues like I think sometimes women are signed at a lower weight class with their contracts than they should be based on the amount of muscle mass that they have. And that has to do with the camera image of the woman on television and how attractive she may or may not be. And then it causes a lot of dangerous weight cuts that become bad for self-esteem, bad for bullying on social media, and just sometimes impossible to meet. I also have seen from the business end, because I'm a woman, I'm always asking. I always ask the commissioner what was their check. I'll always go around and try to find out who got paid what after a fight, even with the UFC. And I, have noticed obviously that women aren't paid the same as men. So those things. And then just sometimes the reliance on image, I think, rather than who's the best athlete, can make it really frustrating, because this is such a circus show, really, when the cameras are all there, and appearances mean a lot. In a lot of sports, that's not the case. And so I feel like the athletes are athletes, and they want to be paid based on their skill set, and they want to go in and be athletes. And sometimes they're forced to become showmen and actors and social media influencers, which really wasn't what they signed up for when they went to the gym. So I think that's hard for them mentally and sometimes physically, like I said, when there are things like weight cuts that are too extreme and expectations that are impossible.
Well, you mentioned the weight cuts. Without naming names, there was a person who I saw that competed at a much lower weight class than I had seen them compete at like 6 months earlier. And having stood next to this person in an elevator, knowing that woman would be able to rip my arms off and beat me with them at that weight class. And to think that she had gotten 20 pounds less somehow seemed like near next to impossible for me. Granted, she did it. She won in pretty devastating fashion too. So
Pretty recently?
pretty recently, yeah, pretty recently.
Yeah,
So
I
I
know.
think you probably had some
Yeah.
ideas, but
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you hit the nail on the head too, and that those type of things really make me think about the mental health and the safety side. At the Association of Ringside Physicians, have you seen any initiatives or programs to support the mental health and safety for the athletes out there? Hey everyone, quick favor to ask. Did you know that nearly 80% of the people tuning in right now aren't subscribed yet? That subscribe button down below is what powers me every week to keep putting out these podcasts. Big shout out and thank you to everyone that's been supporting me for this. I couldn't do it without you. If you're enjoying the content, please subscribe below. It means the world to me. And for everyone supporting me, thank you so much. Now back to the show.
So what we do is we work on, say, policy statements and publications to try to get kind of gold standard recommendations and guidelines out there for all the individual commissions to use. And then whether the commissions use them or not is their choice, but at least we put out the medical gold standard. So we work on policy statements a lot. We're currently working on one regarding weight cuts. We have policy statements on concussions. We have policy statements on recommendations for older fighters and different workups and things like that. So that's the scope. We do a lot of research and a lot of policy drafting and publications with that. I do think currently, because of the focus of mental health at this conference that just ended, we are starting to work on some mental health initiatives and a fighter resource section on our website, as well as work with Angela Lee and her nonprofit Fight Story in any way that we can partner up to promote a cultural change, I guess, and more of a emphasis on paying attention to mental health.
Yeah, I'm a big supporter in what she's doing and that messaging she's putting out. I know we're going to do a podcast in person at some point about that, which I'm really looking forward to. But I think that her kind of step back from her organization was eye-opening, I think, for a lot of people in the combat sports world because of how young she was and success that she had. And obviously, it was already kind of out there about what had happened with her family. Do you think, are there any steps that organizations can take to ensure a safer and more healthy environment for their athletes, I guess, both in the ring and outside of it?
Well, I think one thing is having physicians who are well educated and well informed, because a lot of areas don't require any kind of certification or any kind of training. There are a lot of states. And so I think when you're talking about safety of the athletes, highly educated physicians and referees are the most important two parts of the puzzle. And then the other thing that I think that I would like to see, which I've seen some fighters working on, but I would like to see some type of health insurance or something that's available to treat medical and mental problems as they retire from their careers, because a lot of them just can't get help. Even with the nonprofits that are out there, it can be impossible to get help with paying for physicians and for therapy and any other things that they need. And I just think that that's something that promotions should start working on providing for their fighters who make them so much money.
100%. Having multiple friends who are professional to amateur level fighters, and just knowing the physical toll, the mental toll, that takes on them, and there's little to no reward for most of these athletes too, other than the competition. I'm right there with you. Looking
Mhm.
ahead, how are you envisioning the future of your practice as a ringside physician, and are there any advancement or changes that you anticipate happening out there in the field of combat sports medicine?
I think I'll just keep doing more of the same. I'm already on the board of the Association of Ringside Physicians, and I've worked with almost every promotion out there. I'm working with one championship in Atlanta this November, so that will be a first, although I did spend time with them in Bangkok recently. So I don't really have career goals in that, just keep doing more of the same. I am going to try to write a book, and that might be insightful given my background for some people. So personally, just more of the same, I think. When it comes to like what changes that I think might be coming, I think that, we are working towards like blood testing to identify concussions. We
Mm.
are constantly revising concussion management recommendations every 4 years or so. There's some new recommendations come out. So obviously those things will continue to progress. Feel like combat sports lags behind organizations like the NFL in their concussion management and education, but I see progress coming, and it has been happening over the last 10 years in combat sports. So I assume that we'll continue to make progress in education, educating the fighters, and in concussion management and treatment. So I think those changes are coming, obviously, and then some rule set changes that just happened, and there might be more coming, over time as one championship enters more cities. So I think those are the changes that I see on the horizon.
Super interested, given the hydration tests that one has and what that means for you and the ringside positions and what you see there. So, very interested to get your feedback after the Atlanta show as well. And just for someone like myself, I was literally that pre-edge of concussion awareness.
Mm.
Literally, I had my team the medical director for the team be like, "You can't go back out there." Like, well, we're going to let you can walk out there, but we'll never let you play again, just so you know. And I don't
Hmm.
think there was a lot of that happening. That was 2006. And that was,
Yeah,
I think, the same year the Concussion Will Smith movie, or maybe the year after that came out. And it was really put on people's radars. And just to see how the conversation is ever evolving and shifting, and the recognition behind the effects of those concussive brain injuries, and just overall health and safety for athletes. It's really amazing to hear your work and hear that the ARP is helping further that. And actually, you're the first ringside physician that I've had on some 85 episodes of the
oh
podcast, and
wow,
uh, another 70 live streams on millions.co. So this is
wow,
super helpful. And I
thank
think,
you.
no, thank you. Thank you. Because I think this type of information is important to get out there. And my whole purpose of this business podcast is just to show people what's happening behind the scenes. And this is a vantage point I haven't been able to give yet. So thank you for joining me today. And I'm really looking forward to continue to following your career and the next stuff that the ARP is putting out.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan. It was good to be here.
It's a pleasure too. Yeah, we're looking forward to getting the feedback on this, and have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you.